The crystalline dome of the Galactic Council chamber shimmered like a frozen ocean, every surface refracting the glow of twin suns pouring through the transparent ceiling. Beneath that glittering canopy, species older than empires gathered in solemn assembly. Robed figures with too many limbs adjusted their collars. Amphibian dignitaries croaked softly to one another in dampened tones. Even the thunderous Varric, who normally shook their armored hides in defiance, stood still as stone. It was a day of judgment, and I, Ambassador Zerlon of the Threxian Dominion, had the honor of watching the youngest species in our sphere stand trial. The humans sat at their assigned table, a small semicircle of chairs with nothing more than simple datapads before them. Compared to the opulent thrones of the elder races, they looked like children at a banquet meant for monarchs. They were, in every way, too new to be here. Barely a century had passed since they escaped their homeworld's gravity well. Their ships were crude, their colonies fragile, their military doctrine laughable. Precision rifles instead of orbital annihilation, subtle maneuvers instead of overwhelming firepower. It was a comedy acted out on the stage of history. The other ambassadors saw them as amusing distractions at best, nuisances at worst. I shared this opinion wholeheartedly. The presiding officer, High Counselor Vex Terra, raised her ridged arms, and the hum of conversation diminished to silence. Her voice, amplified by crystalline resonance, filled the chamber. Representatives of Earth, the Council has deliberated upon your petition for expanded settlement rights. After careful review, the conclusion is unanimous. She paused for weight, as she always did, savoring the gravity of her role. Your request is denied. Furthermore, due to repeated violations of trade protocols, sanctions will be enacted immediately against your fleets and your colonies. Gasps, some feigned and some sincere, rolled across the chamber. It was not every day an entire species was so bluntly rebuked. Normally the Council wrapped their refusals in layers of honeyed phrasing. But the humans were too minor to warrant ceremony. They would accept the decree, whimper in private, and adjust their aspirations downward. That was the natural order. Yet, curiously, they did not protest. The lead representative, a woman named Bryn Calloway, identified to me as their trade minister, merely leaned back in her chair. She had an infuriatingly calm posture, legs crossed, one hand idly turning a stylus between her fingers as though this grand judgment were nothing more than a dull afternoon lecture. I admit, her composure unsettled me. One expected indignation, pleading, or at least a visible crack of despair. Instead, she looked as if she had just confirmed a calculation she had long suspected. Vex Terra pressed on. These measures are final. Humanity will remain confined to its present territories, its influence strictly regulated. Any further infractions may result in military intervention. Now, surely, the humans would object. Any rational species, cornered so, would lash out. But Calloway only rose smoothly from her seat. She bowed, not deeply, but with deliberate respect. Her smile, small, sharp, impossible to read, caught the light as if designed to draw attention. I see, she said, her voice steady and almost playful. Well then, counselors, thank you for your clarity. We shall adjust accordingly. She turned, gathering her datapad, and gestured for the other humans to follow. No anger, no desperation, not even curiosity. They simply left. The doors closed behind them with a gentle hiss, leaving behind a silence more profound than outrage could have ever produced. Around me, other ambassadors exchanged puzzled glances. A few chuckled awkwardly, as if uncertain whether they had just witnessed compliance or mockery. I remember smoothing my robes and leaning toward my aide, whispering, "They are too naive to grasp what they have lost." The smile was merely a nervous tick. My aide nodded, though even he looked unconvinced. Still, I dismissed the unease. Humans were strange creatures, quick to improvise, quick to pretend confidence where none existed. They had no fleets worth noting, no economy that could shake a sector, no alliances that could bend council will. Their tricks with precision marksmanship were amusing battlefield anecdotes, nothing more. Stories of lone soldiers eliminating commanders with improbable accuracy were tavern tales, not strategic realities. Accuracy did not build empires. Firepower did. Numbers did. We, the ancient species, understood this truth. They did not. As the chamber emptied, I lingered near the exit, observing the empty chairs the humans had vacated. The impression of their presence still clung there, like a faint echo. Something about the casual finality of their departure gnawed at the edge of my thoughts. They had not asked for compromise, had not protested, had not begged for reconsideration. They had smiled, thanked us, and left. That was all. It should have been a relief. It was not. I recall the exact sensation, a slight tightening of my neural tendrils, the same I felt when a predator's shadow once passed too close during my youth. Instinct whispered danger, though logic scoffed. They are insignificant, I told myself aloud, drawing a curious look from a fellow ambassador. I forced a laugh and added, perhaps they are simply poor at diplomacy. He agreed quickly, perhaps too quickly. The council had no appetite for doubting itself. We had spoken, and the verdict was immutable. Humanity's fate was sealed. Or so we believed. That evening, as I dictated my report to the Dominion, I could not keep from describing the smile. Their representative showed no anger, no despair, only a strange serenity, as though the council's decree had been anticipated, even desired. I advise continued observation, though I suspect nothing of consequence will follow. Those were my exact words, preserved in record. I would read them again many times in the years to come, each time with mounting regret. For if there is one thing I failed to grasp then, it is that humans are not like us. Where we wield overwhelming barges, they prize a single, perfect strike. Where we intimidate with numbers, they maneuver with patience. I thought it foolish, like their soldiers who lie still for days just to place one bullet. What is one bullet against an army? I laughed at the notion then. We all did. But laughter is brittle when built on arrogance. We mistook their silence for surrender, their calm for weakness, their smile for naivety. Yet that moment, that quiet exit from the chamber, was not the end of the story. It was the trigger being pulled, and we were too blind to hear the report. Our confidence did not fracture immediately. It cracked slowly, imperceptibly, like a crystal strained by unseen pressure. By the time we realized what was happening, the bullet had already traveled. And though we could not yet see it, humanity's aim had been true. The weeks following the Council's judgment unfolded with deceptive calm. I expected humans to clamor at our embassy doors, filing petitions, begging reconsideration, perhaps attempting to bribe lesser functionaries. It was the usual rhythm of the newly sanctioned: anger, bargaining, despair. Yet from Earth and its colonies came only silence. Reports streamed across my desk, routine trade data, migration logs, diplomatic chatter, but nothing resembling outrage or supplication. Their ships still moved along the regulated lanes, their envoys attended scheduled meetings, and their markets traded without visible disruption. The restraint unsettled me more than defiance would have. Among my colleagues, amusement replaced caution. One ambassador quipped over dinner that humanity must have broken its spirit at the council chamber. Another suggested they were too provincial to even understand what had been taken from them. Laughter followed, and though I joined in, my neural tendrils twitched with doubt. A creature that smiles at its own shackling does not fail to understand. It prepares. At first, I comforted myself with numbers. The Dominion's analysts presented charts demonstrating humanity's weakness. Their gross domestic output was a fraction of any core world. Their fleets numbered in the dozens, laughably small compared to the thousands in our arsenals. Their colonies stretched thin, reliant on imported resources. All indicators pointed to collapse under the Council's sanctions. Yet, even as I repeated these assurances, I found myself rereading reports from fringe sectors that hinted at irregular activity. Human vessels were appearing in unexpected places, always just beyond the reach of patrols, always carrying unmarked cargo. Curiosity overcame pride, and I summoned my aide. Compile for me a timeline of human trade routes since the sanctions. He returned with a display of glowing trajectories, red lines for restricted sectors and green for sanctioned pathways. What struck me was not what was absent, but what had emerged, a constellation of new routes, subtle and irregular, like threads woven between forgotten ports. Impossible, I muttered. They lack permission for these sectors. My aide reminded me that these were not central hubs, but neglected outposts, minor stations abandoned by the Council centuries ago, places we deemed beneath our attention. And there it was, the first flicker of human strategy. They had not fought the sanction. They had sidestepped it. Like water flowing downhill, they found the cracks in our system and filled them. Soon, whispers arrived from merchants of lesser species. Humans were offering goods at astonishingly low prices, medical supplies half the council rate, starship components adaptable to dozens of hull designs, food replicators calibrated for multiple biologies. Such versatility was unheard of. Our industries prided themselves on specialization. Theirs embraced improvisation. I raised the matter at a diplomatic luncheon. Have any of you noticed the peculiar resilience of human markets? I asked. A dozen faces blinked at me. One chuckled. Ambassador, they are emptying their coffers to appear stable. They will starve soon enough. The rest nodded, content in their consensus. I sipped my drink, but did not share their confidence. Resilience built on artifice collapses quickly. Yet humanity's steadiness seemed too measured, too precise, like the aim of their infamous soldiers. The first sign of our miscalculation arrived 3 months later. A cargo fleet from the Dominion, bound for our colony of Zareth Prime, reported severe shortages. Our usual suppliers had defaulted on contracts, lured away by human competitors. Outrage surged in the Dominion Assembly, and I was instructed to lodge a formal protest. When I delivered it, Calloway herself received me. She was gracious, even sympathetic, yet her eyes glittered with something sharper than courtesy. Ambassador, she said smoothly, we regret if our enterprises have inconvenienced yours. Commerce, however, follows opportunity. We simply offered better terms. Her words infuriated me more than open defiance would have. She spoke as though the Council's sanctions were irrelevant, as though humanity operated in a parallel system immune to our authority. I left fuming, yet I could not deny the truth in her tone. Opportunity had indeed shifted, and species once loyal to the Council now queued at Earth's gates. Our response was predictable: more restrictions, harsher penalties. Council patrols were authorized to inspect human vessels, fines levied against alien traders found in their company. We expected compliance. Instead, the opposite occurred. Traders openly defied inspections, arguing that human convoys paid promptly, protected their ships, and honored contracts without corruption. Some even dared compare human markets to the ossified bureaucracy of the Council, and the comparison was not flattering. Panic stirred beneath the Council's polished surface. Meetings grew heated. I watched as venerable ambassadors who once mocked humanity now whispered in tight clusters, debating measures more desperate than dignified. Still, we comforted ourselves with the assumption that the humans lacked force to defend their fragile gains. We will tighten the noose, Vexterra declared. Without military strength, they cannot sustain this defiance. Heads nodded. Voices murmured agreement. Yet a disquieting thought gnawed at me. Had we not already tried to tighten the noose, only to watch them slip free? Reports grew stranger. A patrol sent to intercept a human convoy returned empty-handed, their prey having altered course hours before the ambush. Another patrol discovered their weapon systems mysteriously offline, leaving them adrift until engineers restored function. Sabotage was suspected, but no culprit identified. The humans denied involvement with infuriating smiles. How did a fledgling species outmaneuver fleets honed over millennia? It defied logic, yet the evidence mounted. Among my aides, theories flourished. One suggested human ships employed predictive algorithms, anticipating patrol movements with uncanny accuracy. Another whispered of espionage, that humans had infiltrated Council communications. I silenced such speculation in official reports, unwilling to appear paranoid. Yet privately, I considered them plausible. Humanity's precision, once mocked as eccentric, was proving terrifyingly effective. My first true moment of dread came not from military skirmishes, but from migration records. Entire communities from neutral species were abandoning Council space to settle in human territories. The reason, when pressed, was always the same. Their conditions are better. Wages fairer, housing cleaner, medicine more reliable. Even cultural freedoms were greater. The Council, with its labyrinth of laws and hierarchies, could not compete with the simplicity of human arrangements. What we dismissed as disorder, others embraced as opportunity. It became clear to me then that we were not contending with mere defiance, but with a rival system of order, one leaner, faster, and more appealing than our own. Humanity had not resisted sanctions with force. They had turned them into an invitation. By pushing them out, we had freed them to build something sharper. And like the aim of a sniper, every move struck where it hurt most. Yet I still clung to hope. Surely, I told myself, the Council's vast fleets and centuries of experience must prevail. Humanity could not sustain its momentum forever. This was but a flash of rebellion, not a lasting transformation. Still, when I closed my eyes at night, I saw again Calloway's smile in the chamber, and I feared that what I called rebellion she called inevitability. The bullet had left the barrel, and though we could not see it, its trajectory was set. Each passing day brought it closer. The Council's patience wore thin, and with it, our veneer of superiority. In private chambers, where the crystalline walls muted sound but could not mute fear, debates turned shrill. The humans, once dismissed as a trivial nuisance, had become an irritant too visible to ignore. Their markets grew while ours contracted. Their colonies flourished while ours faltered. Entire supply chains unraveled under their quiet, efficient touch. The Dominion's treasury groaned, and the other elder species fared no better. Our answer, predictably, was escalation. Sanctions multiplied into blockades. Patrol fleets were doubled, armed escorts shadowed human traders, and tariffs punished any who dared exchange goods with them. The intention was simple: crush their fragile momentum under the heel of overwhelming force. Yet every attempt slid from our grasp like sand through claws. Convoys scheduled for interception vanished from charts, appearing days later in distant sectors with holds brimming full. Colonies starved of Council imports revealed new stockpiles, food replicators of human design, distributed cheaply, almost mockingly, in the shadow of our embargo. I sat in the chamber as reports piled higher, each one a dagger in our pride. They cannot produce at such volume, Vexterra insisted. They must be stealing designs. Her declaration echoed what many of us secretly believed, yet investigations uncovered no theft. Their technology was not imitation but innovation, cobbled together from scraps, made adaptable in ways our rigid traditions forbade. Where we perfected, they improvised. Where we entrenched, they adapted. I remember vividly the day the Council attempted its first direct show of force. A fleet of 12 warships was dispatched to seize a human convoy rumored to be carrying contraband to a neutral sector. Our military analysts predicted an effortless victory. Instead, the fleet limped back in disgrace, not from battle, but from humiliation. Their weapons had failed simultaneously at the moment of engagement. Diagnostics revealed corrupted firmware, replaced by code that simply shut down when targeting human vessels. No one could prove human interference, but suspicion was unavoidable. The whispers began then, low at first, but spreading fast. How did they do it? Why were we blind? The idea of humans breaching our secure systems was unthinkable, yet it fit too neatly with the evidence. Their convoys moved like prey that knew the hunter's path before the hunt began. Their timing was always precise, as if some invisible hand guided them. I thought again of their obsession with snipers. A soldier, prone in the dirt, waiting days for one shot. They had scaled that philosophy into commerce, politics, war itself. Every move a single bullet, every shot placed with uncanny accuracy. Calloway returned to the Council during this period, invited under the pretense of negotiation. She arrived unguarded, unhurried, radiating that same infuriating serenity as before. Her words were polite, almost deferential, yet they struck like blows. "We do not seek to undermine," she told us, "only to offer alternatives. If others choose our path, it is not coercion, it is choice." That phrase, "it is choice," repeated itself in my thoughts long after she departed. The Council thrived on mandates, on control through bureaucracy. Humans wielded freedom like a weapon, and others flocked to it eagerly. The Council's next act of desperation was economic sabotage. Subsidies were poured into failing industries, tariffs lifted selectively to undercut human trade. But the results only hastened our decline. Species long exploited by Council monopolies discovered that human contracts honored fairness. Our subsidies could not erase decades of resentment. Instead of returning to our markets, they defected more openly to Earth's. The tighter we gripped, the more stars slipped from our hand. I remember standing on a balcony overlooking the Capitol concourse when the first demonstrations erupted. Alien citizens, our citizens, marched with banners demanding access to human goods, human wages, human freedoms. Their chants filled the air, their voices rising against the order we had built for centuries. I, who had once believed our rule unshakable, felt a tremor run through my bones. The people were no longer ours. They were theirs. Each report that crossed my desk grew more surreal. Entire mining colonies petitioned to join human protectorates. Agricultural worlds declared strikes until trade with Earth resumed. Even smugglers abandoned the shadows, openly aligning with human shipping lanes. Our military presence, once a deterrent, became a recruitment tool for humanity. The harder we pressed, the more appealing they became. The Dominion demanded answers of me. How can they spread so quickly? My superiors barked. I could only respond with a truth they refused to hear. Because they offer what we cannot, dignity. It earned me reprimand, yet I did not retract the words. I had seen their effect firsthand. Their technology, though rough, worked across species lines. Their trade honored contracts. Their governance, chaotic as it appeared, empowered individuals rather than stifling them. It was not perfect, yet perfection was never their aim. Their aim was sufficiency, delivered with precision, like a sniper's bullet. Our counterattacks devolved into farce. Patrols chased convoys only to find decoys. Fleets arrived at contested sectors to discover negotiations had already ended in humanity's favor. Every plan the Council devised unraveled, not with explosions but with silence, as though the humans had anticipated the move before we conceived it. My colleagues grew frantic. They spoke of war, of crushing Earth before it grew further. Yet even those words sounded hollow. For what is war without allies, without supply lines, without faith in one's cause? I confronted Calloway once more, in a private meeting arranged under the guise of diplomacy. What is it you seek? I demanded. You undermine our foundations, yet claim no conquest. Why the charade? She regarded me with that same unreadable smile, her eyes calm as a still sea. Ambassador, she said, we seek no empire. We simply seek space to breathe. If others find our air fresher, should we be blamed? Her words cut deeper than threats ever could. There was no boast, no arrogance, only inevitability. She knew what I was only beginning to grasp. The Council was collapsing under its own weight, and humanity had merely positioned themselves where the pieces would fall. I left that meeting shaken, my certainty eroded to rubble. For the first time, I wondered not whether humanity could be stopped, but whether they had already won. The notion filled me with dread and, though I loathed to admit it, a strange admiration. They had fought no battles, fired no fleets, toppled no capitals. They had simply aimed true and waited for gravity to finish the shot. And gravity, I realized, was on their side. Panic spread through the Council like a contagion, swift and indiscriminate. Meetings that once exuded confidence now reeked of desperation. Our voices, once measured and stately, rose in discordant waves as reports piled higher with each passing cycle. Treasury reserves dwindled, allies defected, patrol fleets sat idle for lack of funding, and yet the humans moved forward with unerring calm. Their markets expanded, their colonies grew, their technology proliferated. It was as though the very weight of history tilted toward them, and we could do nothing to halt the slide. I remember one assembly with painful clarity. Vexterra, once the paragon of council authority, stood trembling as she recited the latest economic figures. Entire sectors had slipped into deficit, unable to compete with human replicator distribution. Key industries, once monopolies that fed our dominance, had become obsolete. The chamber that had once glittered with grandeur now felt like a tomb. Some ambassadors shouted for war, others begged for compromise, but all spoke with the brittle voices of the defeated. It was then that the humans returned, not as supplicants, but as arbiters. Bryn Calloway entered the chamber with the same serene poise as she had worn during our first meeting. Only now the atmosphere was inverted. Where once we towered over them in disdain, now we shrank beneath their composure. She addressed us with that infuriatingly calm smile, her words devoid of threat, yet heavy with inevitability. Counselors, she began, we harbor no grievance. We do not seek to topple, only to build. But the galaxy has chosen its course. You may resist, but resistance will only leave you behind. The simplicity of the statement crushed us more thoroughly than any bombardment could have. They did not demand surrender, nor did they posture as conquerors. They merely extended a hand, confident that we would grasp it rather than drown. It was the quietest of ultimatums, wrapped in courtesy, impossible to refute. In the days that followed, the defections became open floods. Entire species petitioned for integration into human trade networks. Former Council client states, once bound to us by force, volunteered for human partnership. Even within the Dominion, whispers of reforms spread among the citizens, emboldened by stories of fair wages and thriving colonies under human stewardship. The choice was no longer whether humanity would dominate, but whether one would accept their invitation or face irrelevance. I, who once mocked them as children, now found myself cornered by my own irrelevance. My superiors instructed me to stall, to negotiate terms that might preserve our pride, yet every meeting ended the same way. Calloway listening patiently, her gaze steady, her replies precise. She never gloated, never boasted, never raised her voice. She did not need to. Victory was already woven into the fabric of her presence. The humiliation came swiftly and without ceremony. The Council signed agreements that, in any other age, would have been unthinkable, aligning our economies with human markets, accepting their technologies as standards, even permitting their mediators to settle disputes we once governed. Each signature was a nail in the coffin of our sovereignty. And yet, there was no alternative. Without them, our people would starve, our industries collapse, our fleets rot in their docks. With them, there was at least a path forward, though it meant walking in their shadow. The bitterest sting was that humanity never fired a single fleet. They had conquered not with weapons, but with precision of vision, striking where our complacency left us weakest. They had wielded patience like a sniper's rifle, waiting for the exact moment to pull the trigger. And when they did, the shot was true, clean, devastating. I have often replayed those moments in my mind, searching for where we might have stopped them. Was it when they smiled at the Council's decree? Was it when they built new routes among forgotten ports? Was it when they offered freedom where we offered chains? Each time I reached the same conclusion, there was never a moment. Their victory was not a sudden blow, but an accumulation of truths we refused to see. They never needed to defeat us. We defeated ourselves, and they were merely accurate enough to be waiting. Now, I serve in a different capacity. Once an ambassador of the proud Threxian Dominion, I am now a liaison officer stationed in a human trade hub. My duties are simple. Process applications from my own people seeking work, negotiate shipping schedules, sign forms. The very species I once scorned now employs me in a role that would have shamed my ancestors. And yet, I find no hatred in their treatment. The humans are unfailingly courteous, even respectful. They greet me warmly, they listen when I speak, and they never remind me of our defeat. They do not need to. The reality is plain in every ship that departs their docks, every market that thrives under their oversight. Occasionally, I glimpse Calloway in the corridors, still smiling that inscrutable smile. I wonder if she remembers our first encounter, when we believed ourselves her judges. Perhaps she does, though she is far too tactful ever to mention it. More often than not, she simply inclines her head in acknowledgement, as though we are colleagues rather than former adversaries. It is a gesture more humbling than scorn could ever be. The irony is complete. We had sought to contain them, to limit their growth, to laugh at their primitive reliance on accuracy. But accuracy was precisely what made them inevitable. They did not aim to overwhelm, only to strike at the precise point where arrogance became fragility. And they never missed. I tell myself I have adapted, that I accept the new order, yet some nights I lie awake replaying the chamber's silence as they walked away smiling. It was not the silence of defeat, as I thought then, but the silence of a trigger pulled. The bullet traveled slowly, across months and years, but it struck with unerring precision. We are all living in its echo. Perhaps one day, history will record me as a witness, a fool who misjudged the humans until it was too late. Perhaps it will forget me entirely, subsumed in the tide of their ascent. Either way, the outcome is the same. Humanity did not conquer us, they convinced us. They did not enslave us, they enticed us. And in the end, we handed them everything, grateful to be included. It is a cruel symmetry that the galaxy, which once laughed at their obsession with snipers, is now bound by their aim. They prove that in a universe of armies and empires, sometimes one well-placed shot can alter the course of all. And I, once an ambassador of a great dominion, now sign paperwork in their offices, a minor official in the system we tried to prevent. So I offer this reflection not as resistance, but as acknowledgement. We thought ourselves the hunters. We were, in truth, the targets. And when the humans took their shot, we never saw it coming.